3, 2.
Lassana Cisse's body will finally be repatriated to the Ivory Coast. Objections flood in against a proposed quarry on ODZ land in BIRŞEBBUGA, and Malta would have come in dead last in the Eurovision, new numbers have revealed. All this and more on Lovin Daily. Good evening, Malta and Gozo. Johnathan, Cilia here, joined by Sasha, Vella. We've got a major update on a story we've been covering for literally years, as well as some very important developments on some other stories. So let's jump into today's top story. The body of Lassana Cisse, the murdered Ivorian Coast national, will finally be repatriated back to his home country 3 years after he was murdered. So obviously 3 years ago, Malta awoke to the shocking news that this man who was just walking home from a night out in Halfar, going home by himself, was killed in cold blood by two alleged members of the AFM forces, the Malta Armed Forces. 3 years on, you know, a lot of questions remain about his body, whether it was going to be sent back home. His family are waiting for it, and it seems that finally his body will be sent home. So government sources close to the Foreign Affairs Ministry spoke to Lovin Malta, said not only will his body be repatriated in the coming days, but a memorial event will also be held in Malta. Now, details on this memorial event aren't really public yet, so as soon as we get them, we will be publishing them. And to note, this is not the first time that the government said that his body will be repatriated imminently. Former Foreign Affairs Minister Evers Bartolo had also said something similarly, so we will wait and see until the plane actually takes off with the body. But it does seem that finally, after 3 years of an ordeal, the body will finally be sent home to the family.
Yeah, I mean, the 42-year-old father of three was gunned down on 6th April 2019. So this has really been a long time coming. In fact, many people are saying that it definitely should not have taken 3 years. The two officers are currently out on bail in relation to his murder, which I'd say is also a direct reflection of Malta's justice system. And now moving on to the next story, objections are flooding in against a development application for a proposed quarry on agricultural land in Ben Isa and BIRŞEBBUGA. An application for a quarry in Lower Coralline limestone for hard rock on virgin agricultural land has recently surfaced. And the story on Kultura BIRŞEBBUGA is urging people to appeal against it. The application, filed by Paul Foltson, is for the development of a quarry on over 6,000 square meters of ODZ land, situated in the southern part of Malta. Now, might I remind you, ODZ means out of development zone, so this means that development should not take place in these areas which are designated as ODZ. Among the representations, residents and environmentalists are warning of the unprecedented harm that the approval of such an application would bring with it.
No, listen, Lovin Malta has been doing a big push on kind of environmental abuse and what we're seeing in Malta over the last year. We launched the planning web, and obviously our journalist Sasha Vella herself is doing some stellar work on this. So if you feel strongly about this specific development, the applications for your objections are still open. You can still raise your voice, have your voice heard, and you can let the authorities know that you are not okay with this. So you can submit your objection until the 27th of this month. And if you're interested in finding out more about what's going on in BIRŞEBBUGA, I do urge you to check out the article. Moving on to the next story, a bit of a shocker, and maybe the closure of this saga of the Eurovision Song Contest 2022. Malta obviously had placed quite poorly in the semi-finals. Malta's Emma Muscat's I Am What I Am placed 16 out of 18 songs in the semi-finals. We didn't even make it to the finals. And now new numbers revealed by the Eurovision authorities show that actually Malta would have placed last if the Eurovision authorities didn't step in, and I'll explain why. So if you're not aware, 6 countries, among them Poland, San Marino, Romania, Georgia, Montenegro, and Azerbaijan, were found guilty of trading in votes. Which goes to show just how serious the Eurovision Song Contest is taken internationally. And they were found guilty of exchanging in votes. So the Eurovision Broadcast Authority have stepped in, they've removed that, and they've recalculated the votes to show what the real results would have been. And the real results would have placed Malta in the final spot. So we would have actually come in dead last. Now this is, obviously we had performed very poorly this year, but this result would have been even poorer, a performance. So that's, quite shocking. So it's actually, a better situation than if authorities hadn't stepped in. So a lot of people had a lot of things to say about this online. I mean, it's no secret that Malta takes Eurovision very seriously. So the fact that Malta had pretty much come in last, this is historic. Malta's never ever come in last in the finals, let alone the semi-finals. On her part, Emma Muscat did release her album the day after the Eurovision. However, she didn't return to the island to speak to her fans. And since then, the island's been doing a lot of soul searching, What can Malta do to win the Eurovision, or at least come in second or third place? People have been saying, we should send in a joke song. Other people have said we need to update the entire approach. Either way, these new numbers show that, Malta does need to kind of look at what it's sending to the Eurovision Song Contest.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I can't say I was surprised at the result. I think Malta could have definitely both had a stronger entry song as well as improved stage presence. I mean, who knows, maybe next year's song will have more rhythm than this year's. So, now on to the next story. Malta-produced medical cannabis chain Carbasi Verde has just decreased its price to €10 per gram. The price drop comes after customer feedback was sent to Materia, the company behind the strain. We have received great feedback about Carbasi Verde from patients, but we also know that medical cannabis can be expensive. This is why we are lowering the price in order to make it more accessible to everyone, Managing Director for Europe, Nick Pateras said. Carbasi Verde is an indica dominant strain manufactured at Materia's local site in Hull Far. It has a current potency of 21.7% THC and comes with a hand-trimmed finish to ensure the best quality for patients.
This is very interesting because this is a Malta-produced cannabis strain, so that's already something very interesting that this is produced in Malta, and the fact that they've cut the price down to €10 a gram for 15-gram packets is very good. In all of Europe, which is making a big push towards medical cannabis in general. There's only about 200,000 medical cannabis patients. The majority of those, about 150,000, are in Germany alone. Why is that? It's because the German government actually subsidizes the cost of medicines for patients, including medical cannabis. So it's no surprise that, the vast majority of medical cannabis patients are only in Germany. And the fact that local patients are saying one of the biggest reasons we can't afford this medicine is because of the price. That's why we're being kicked out of this. We have to turn to the black market for cheaper prices. It's good to see that Materia are looking at this. They're hearing what patients are saying and have actually found a way to cut the prices. But if we want a wider uptake of medical cannabis in Malta for patients that need it, I do think the government do need to kind of look at what Germany's doing and seeing if they want to kind of subsidize things in Malta as well, especially 4 years on since we legalized medical cannabis on the island. Moving on to the final story today, a bit of a shocking incident in St. Julian's last night. A suspect allegedly behind an attack on a Frenchman that left the Frenchman grievously injured fled the scene before police arrived. And this is the second story of this type that we've had in the last 2 days. So on the first story, at about 1:30 a.m. this morning, police were called into Trit St. George in St. Julian's, very popular street, and they found a 26-year-old Frenchman had been grievously injured. He was taken to Mater Dei by ambulance, and his aggressor has not been found. Just the day before, a very similar incident happened in Meleha in Adira Bay, whereas a Nepalese man was found injured with his suspected aggressor also fleeing the scene. So I do hope that authorities are looking into this. I'm sure they're doing their due diligence, and hopefully these two attackers are found in the near future. Before we end today's episode, before we play you out, I do want to make a quick announcement. Next week we have a very, very exciting development to announce vis-a-vis Lovin Daily, to announce that this chapter is coming to a bit of a close. Over the last few years prior to the pandemic, all throughout the pandemic, Lovin Daily has been here, giving you the latest updates on elections, on COVID-19, with breaking stories and interviews galore. And the show will be entering a new phase. So definitely stay tuned next week to hear our announcement, to kind of see what's in store next for the Lovin Daily team. Until then, as always, from myself, Sasha, and the entire Lovin Malta family, have an evening full of lovin'.